We are live.
Good morning and welcome to the February 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Board of Adjustment. The meeting will now come to order. Give me one moment. My name is Jacob Rogers. I'm the chair of the board. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are conducting this meeting using a remote electronic platform as permitted by Session Law 2020-3. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina General Statutes and the city's Unified Development Ordinance. The board typically conducts evidentiary hearings on requests for variances, special use permits, among other requests. Today's meeting will proceed much like an in-person meeting of the board. On the screen, you'll see members of the Board of Adjustment, additionally planning staff and representatives from the city and county's attorney's offices are attending in the remote meeting. Applicants, proponents, and opponents were required to register in advance and are also attending the meeting. When a case is called for its hearing, speakers will be promoted within the platform so their video can be seen. The chair will swear in applicants and witnesses at the beginning of each case. Staff will present each case and applicants will then provide their evidence. Control of the presentation and screen sharing will remain with planning staff. Today's meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube site, and a link to this broadcast is on the website for the Board of Adjustment. Before we begin the evidentiary hearings on today's agenda, I'd like to provide some important information about steps taken to ensure each party's due process rights are protected as we proceed in this platform. Each applicant on today's agenda was notified that the meeting would be conducted using a remote electronic platform. During registration, every applicant on today's agenda consented to the board conducting the evidentiary hearing using this platform. We will also confirm today at the start of each hearing that the participants in the hearing consent to the matter proceeding in this platform. If there is any objection to a matter proceeding in the platform, the case will be continued. Notice of today's meeting was provided by publishing notice in the newspaper mailed to property owners within 600 feet of subject properties, posting a sign at the property, and posting on the city's website. The newspaper, website, and mailed notices for today's meeting contain information how the public can access the remote meeting as it occurs. These notices also contained information about the registration requirement for the meeting, along with information about how to register. All individuals participating in today's evidentiary hearings were also required to submit a copy of any presentation, document, exhibit, or other material that they wish to submit at the hearing prior to today's meeting. All materials that the city received from the participants in today's cases, as well as a copy of the city staff's presentations and documents, were posted on the Board of Adjustment website as part of the agenda. No new documents will be submitted during today's meeting. All decisions of this board are subject to appeal to the Durham Superior Court. Anyone in the audience other than the applicant who wishes to receive a copy of the formal order issued by this board on a particular case must submit a written request for a copy of this order. Good to see you all this morning. And let's go ahead and call the roll. Terry, would you like to take it?
Yes. Kip.
Here.
Okay. Meadows.
Here.
Paletta.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Retchless.
Here.
Okay. Wymore.
Here.
Okay. Major. Okay. Tarrant.
Here.
Bushane.
Here.
And Wymore, Major wasn't here.
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. Cole, any adjustments to the agenda or?
No, there is no adjustments at this time.
All right, thank you. The next item is the approval of the January 25th meeting minutes. I'm hoping everybody's had the chance to review those. If so, is there a motion to approve?
Meadows, move approval.
All right, we've got a Meadows for the first,
Second.
Retchless on the second.
Okay. Kip.
Yes.
Meadows.
Yes.
Paletta.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Retchless.
Yes.
Wymore.
Yes.
Tarrant.
Yes.
And Bushane.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
All right. Moving right along then.
Jacob, before
Yeah.
you guys need to vote on the excused absence for Major.
I don't. Okay, she didn't request one in her email this morning, but I guess
Oh,
we'll
okay.
assume that she is. Does anybody want to make a motion to excuse Jessica's absence?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Natalie. Is there a second?
Sure, Wymore, second.
All right, Tisha Wymore on the second to excuse Jessica Major's absence from today's meeting.
Okay, Kip,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Paletta,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Retchless,
Yes.
Wymore,
Yes.
Tarrant,
Yes.
and Bushane.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
All righty. Well, let's get into the cases. Terry, would you like to call the first case? And
Yes. It's B21-00055. It's a city case. It's a request for a variance from a parking from parking requirements. This subject site is located at 3409 Hillsborough Road, and it's zoned industrial light, and it's in the urban tier. And this case has been advertised for the required period of time and notarized affidavits verifying the sign postings and letter mailing is on file. And seated for this case is Kip, Meadows, Paletta, Rogers, Retchless, Wymore, and Bushane. How many do we need?
we need 7.
Okay, so Bushane.
All right. Before, I forgot to mention this, but does anyone want to disclose any ex parte communication or conflicts of interest today with any cases?
Mr. Chair, I have a conflict of interest with the last case in the event that I'm seated for that one.
B22000001?
Correct.
Okay. All righty. So if you are seated, we'll excuse you from that one. All right. All right, then let's first of all, we need to bring forward the applicants or whoever is going to be speaking during this case. We'll administer the oath at this time, so you'll need to turn on your camera, please. Anybody who plans on giving testimony, if you'll raise your right hand for the oath here. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give today is the truth and nothing but the truth? Richard Adams?
Yes.
Danielle Hammond?
Yes.
All right. Do you consent to this remote meeting platform? Richard?
Yes.
Danielle?
Yes.
We've got a phone number ending in 1007. Chris, what do they need to do to mute? Star or something?
I requested a unmute request. It's
got it.
*6.
Person ending in 1007, can you identify yourself?
Yes, good morning. This is Bradley Batista.
All right. If you, well, I'm going to go ahead and give you the oath as well. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give today is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And do you consent to this remote meeting platform?
Yes.
All righty, thank you. Cole, you want to take it away?
I will. Good morning. I'm Cole Renger, representing the Planning Department. Planning staff requests that the staff report and all materials submitted at the public hearing to be made part of the public record with any necessary corrections as noted.
So noted, thank you.
Case B21-00055 is a request for a variance from the parking requirements. The case is highlighted. The case area is highlighted in red. The site is in the urban tier, zoned light industrial, and is within the city of Durham's jurisdiction. The existing use is a shopping center. Daniel Hammond, applicant, requests a variance from the parking requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO section 10.3.1, which requires that parking for a change from retail to restaurant or similar be calculated at a higher per square footage rate. Durham Festival Shopping Center currently is required to have 590 spaces. The applicant is requesting that no additional spaces be required for this change or any tenant changes in the future. The tenant change would require an additional 11 spaces or a total of 601 vehicle parking spaces. The current parking shown is utilized by primarily restaurant and retail uses. There is 1 indoor recreation use, 14 retail spaces, with the remaining 8 business being restaurant. The required parking for retail totals at 444. The restaurants require 195.6, and then the indoor recreation requires 64.8. Any future tenants are unknown, but the recent trend is a change from retail to restaurants. The subject property is zoned light industrial and in the urban tier. The applicant did provide a parking study report that has been posted online for review. I do also want to mention that recently we've looked at the site plan, and there is actually an additional reduction they can get that they have not applied to their parking at this time.
All right, thank you, Cole. I see we've got a question from Chad. I'm assuming for Cole.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes. Good morning, Cole. As I understood it, this site currently has 590 parking spaces. The language in the staff reports talks about the addition of the tenant change would require an additional 11 spaces. Has there been a request to make a tenant change that's going to require this site to go to 601?
So yeah, there has been a request for this site plan. They're changing from office, which is 250 square foot per pace, to restaurant, which is 200 square foot pace. But even though that's been happening, they're actually doing this for the whole shopping center. That way, in the future, if there's another tenant change that requires more parking, they don't have to come back to the board. So even though there is one for that's bringing this case about, they decided to do it for the whole shopping center, like other cases have in the past. So they don't have to come back to the board in case there's another tenant change, that keeps increasing the parking, because basically there's nowhere to add more parking out there at this time.
The site plan that I'm looking at appears to show a restaurant in the middle of the site. That's not part of this shopping center, or is it? Are the spaces associated with that restaurant? So that's not.
Yeah, that is actually an out parcel
Okay.
of what's in the shopping center.
But the other gas station and restaurant are part of the shopping center, even though they are out parcels as well. Yes? No?
Correct. Because they're not on their own properties.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. One last question. You mentioned that there is a potential for an additional reduction to the parking requirements. Do you know what that is?
I believe it was down to 586, but I think the applicant may speak more to that because that was just recently discussed.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kemp.
Yes. Cole, can you go back to the previous slide that you started with that showed the Chick-fil-A site isn't part, and then also maybe the tire place? It was the first slide you showed, just for a moment. Yeah, so thanks. So that's the Chick-fil-A that Mr. Meadows talked about, right? In the middle, kind of north side of the site. And this is a tire place. Am I right? On the lower right side of the site?
Are you referring to down here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the bottom right. That's not. Yeah, that is, I believe, a tire place.
Okay. So the tire place has its own parking requirements. So they're not.
Correct. They're not part of the shopping center parking requirements because it's on parcel.
Sounds good. I got another question, but it'll be for the applicant's consultant. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right. Any other questions for Cole before we move on? All right. Would the applicant like to come forward? I think Daniel Hammond Would you like
Yes.
to give us a little information about what we have here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for hearing our case today. I am Danielle Hammond, professional civil engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates. I'm the site development, land development engineer associated with this project. So currently with this site, the reason this really has come up, the applicant is looking to convert one of their retail use suites to a restaurant use suite. With that, during the site tier or level 1 site plan review process, we had to look through all the parking spaces to see if the change of use would require more parking spaces than if it were to remain retail. So with that, going through all the various parking reductions previously outlined for the site, we identified that additional parking spaces would be required. However, there was no room to add additional parking spaces on site. As you can tell, this site's pretty maxed out, it's fully developed. So that was the initial request for this variance, is to solidify the 590 parking spaces on site to be the ultimate maximum and minimum required for this site moving forward. I know there's discussion of a parking reduction that has yet to be applied. That was caught through one of our final site plan reviews the other week. So we have actually added the additional parking reduction to the site plan and have resubmitted for site plan review. That additional parking reduction, previously there was a 5% transit reduction applied to this site, but beginning of 2021, there was a text change that has upgraded that to a 10% transit reduction. So at this time, technically 569 spaces will be required for that unit that goes from retail to restaurant, which is in compliance with what we have there today. But the ultimate nature of our request, as Cole mentioned, is we are looking to solidify the number of parking spaces on site today to be the number of required parking spaces moving forward should any suites or tenants change uses. So with that, Richard Adams, a traffic engineer with Kimley Horn, his team conducted a parking study for this site, which has been submitted to the evidence for review. His team went out there and identified weekday and weekend parking counts at various times as outlined in the parking study. And the conclusion of the parking study is the peak parking demand for the Durham Festival Shopping Center is 254 spaces, which is 43% of the available supply at the Durham Festival Shopping Center. So with that, we're here for any questions, myself and Richard, regarding this project.
All right. Danielle, would you like all of your written and oral testimony to be part of the record?
Yes.
Kind of a weird question to ask, but something we have to ask. Chad, you have a question for the applicant?
I do, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Danielle. So essentially what we're looking for here, what you guys are requesting is that essentially the total number of parking spaces on this site be fixed at 590 spaces, regardless of the use type that goes in there. Is that, I want to be sure that I understand that that's the request.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
That's the request.
I assume that one of the challenges that the site is facing is that the existing uses that were in there, when the shopping center was configured or revised, had lower parking requirements than the uses that now seem to be interested in the shopping center, like, for example, restaurants. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate.
Okay. If every single amount of I'm sorry to this may or may not be a possible future conclusion, but I want to ask the question anyway. If every single square foot of space in this shopping center were given over to restaurants, which may happen, may not happen, what would the total number of parking spaces required for this site be?
Hey, Danielle, do you want me to jump in on that?
Yes, please.
Hey, good morning. Richard Adams, also with Kimley Horn. I'm an engineer and planner, and we conducted the parking study. And to answer your question, I mean, Obviously, we would have to do some additional calculations. We don't anticipate, and I've never seen that happen, where the shopping center of this nature and size converts entirely to restaurants. But they do have a lot of restaurants already. And as Danielle mentioned, when we counted the peak on weekday and weekend, we used less than half the parking supply. So we feel very confident that any reasonable expectation of changes of land uses here, including going overwhelmingly to restaurants, would be accommodated with the existing parking supply, given that we had an extra 300 spaces when we recorded the counts. Does that answer your question? Can I?
It does. I have a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Maybe for you, maybe for Danielle.
Sure.
So the next question is, are there any contractual obligations or other elements in the shopping center, or that the shopping center is bound to, where they could not deny a future tenant from coming in? Are there any contractual obligations in place that would prevent the owner of this development from saying, I'm sorry, I can't accommodate your lease request, we simply don't have the parking spaces? So that was one, and I have one more question after that.
Chad, just before you go on, I do have the number difference if they changed all the retail to restaurants, if you'd like to know the difference between that parking.
Sure.
Yeah, so right now, for the retail space, there's 394 spaces are required. If they change that to office, there would be 493 required. That's not including the indoor recreation of 16,000 square feet, but that's just if they change all the retail to restaurants.
So what's the total, Cole?
So the total that they're required now is at 394, and if they change it all to restaurants, all the 98,676 square feet, the total required would be 493.
So basically adding 100.
That's before calculating the 20% reduction.
Okay, so they have 590, they want to go to 601. If everything went to retail, they would need 701 or approximately 700.
Additional 99 spaces. And then you would apply the 20% reduction of that. So
all right, last question. So I understand that you guys did a traffic study, and the study determined that the utilization rate of the parking was less than half of the required parking spaces. Have you guys approached the staff about a text amendment or any other sort of remedy to this problem of I think essentially the claim you're making is that the UDO standards require double the amount of parking that's necessary. So have you guys pursued any other remedies to this issue for this site?
One thing I do want to mention, and I'll let Danielle answer that question, but that I should have mentioned before, is that the restaurants that are here and that are usually found in inline shopping center space like this are much more of a predominantly pickup nature, including the restaurant that would be built in the space in question. And the 10 spaces per 1,000 that you see on the screen here, or 1 per 100 square feet, is a very high rate of parking for a land use of that type, when most people are just coming and going in a very quick nature to just pick up food and go. Not everybody, certainly some of these restaurants do have some sit down space. But I just want to make the point that this is kind of, so yes, I think that the restaurant rate here predominantly is not appropriate for these type of restaurants, to answer that question. And then your other question in regards to, I think, Danielle, did you want to add on to that at all?
Not to your initial answer, but to your next question, no further action has been taken to make a text amendment for the City of Durham UDO parking requirements to be in line with what this site is showing. We decided to pursue a variance in discussion with planning staff, since this is more of a site-specific scenario. And given just the site is already developed, we wanted to pursue a more site-specific alternative rather than a full text amendment.
Thank you.
This is Jessica Dockery from the planning staff. I also wanted to chime in and say that Mr. Meadows we probably as staff would not entertain a specific text amendment for parking of this nature at this time, because we do know that we need to do an overhaul of all of the parking. So we wouldn't recommend a piecemeal approach at this time anyways.
All right, thank you. Ian Kemp, I think you were next.
Yeah, thanks. Quick question. What is the fast food drive-through restaurant that's on the site?
Great, you're referring to the Chick-fil-A that's in the out parcel?
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm looking at your support, but the out parcel Chick-fil-A is not part of the site, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean in the report? The existing fast food with drive-through would be Dunkin'.
Okay, but it also references a coffee shop. Is that not Dunkin'? Let me pull up my report here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you could just point to specifically what you're asking, that.
Sure. Okay, so I'm on page 4 of your 58-page submittal.
Right.
Going down in the middle, right in the middle is coffee donut shop with drive-through. So I assume that was Dunkin'. But then there's somewhere else that referenced a drive-through restaurant. I guess on page 3, it talks about a fast food restaurant with drive-through window, kind of halfway down the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
6
I believe what we use that for is to determine, and it's complicated, but it's explained further along, is that the fast food restaurant with drive-through land use was only used to come up with a time of day distribution for the parking. One thing we did not mention, because ultimately we recommend using the parking counts, but we also looked at ITE parking calculations and then time of day distribution to look at every single land use and what time that ITE thinks that those land uses peak based on time of day. And so further on, we have a large chart that takes up a full 11 by 17 sheet that shows the time of day distribution for all of these land uses. And for certain land uses, there was no time of day distribution, so we had to pull something similar. And so that's what we pulled the fast food with drive-through time. So all we use from that land use is time of day distribution. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, because we didn't have any, there is no data for that particular land use in terms of time of day distribution. So ultimately we recommend, I mean, we provided that information kind of as an aside, but we really feel like the most accurate representation of parking demand here are the actual parking counts conducted at this site, which was actually at a much lower level than what ITE recommended.
Okay, I've got another question. The anchor tenant is Harris Teeter. Don't they have exclusions on what can be sold? Because I've tried to lease in malls before, and the supermarket says absolutely not, no bottle shops, no pizza. This is just an example. So Harris Teeter sells pizza. So if I was Harris Teeter, I wouldn't want Little Caesars going in there. So this is just informationally. And obviously you're the traffic person, so you may not know. So I'm not trying to stump you. I'm just trying to understand.
No, I would think that the owners and folks involved in the leasing would be aware of any exclusions like that. It's a good question, but I feel confident that's been vetted. Danielle, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I have no information pertaining to lease agreements for Harris Teeter or any other tenants, but I would expect that would have been vetted by the owner before pursuing any new tenants that come to the shopping center.
Okay, thank you.
All right, David.
I have a few questions. The first one may be addressed to staff or whoever could answer it. I did not see the traffic study. I missed it. I'm wondering how did I miss it? Where is it?
So the traffic study is actually posted online where the agendas can be found. It's also, I was screen sharing it a moment ago. I can share it again, but it was posted. We allow applicants to present stuff a week prior to the meeting. So this was at that time basically a week prior. So it wasn't, if you looked at it earlier, it wouldn't have been posted until the week prior of this meeting.
So that was my mistake. I need to go back and check the that website.
We can help you in the future. Maybe we can have an off this meeting and show you how to access that and show you where to go with staff separately from this meeting.
Okay. I would like that because the traffic study is very important, and so I'm not as prepared as I would want to be. That answers that. A few questions for the applicant. I'm curious about how the out parcel came about, because by selling off that piece, it then limited the owner as to potential future parking. So I'm wondering, do you know anything about the out parcel being sold? And where I'm going is, did the owner create this problem with parking themselves by selling off some of their property?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to how and when the out parcel came to be from the parent tract. But in order to have the out parcel subdivided from the main parcel and provide a site plan on the out parcel, the site plan for the remaining portion and the out parcel portion would just need to meet the City of Durham UDO requirements at the time of subdivision. Does that kind of help your question a little bit? Answer your question a little bit?
So with regard to one of our findings is that the hardship was not created by actions of the owner. I'm wanting to give you all the opportunity to address a question that I have, is if the owner had not sold that out parcel and they had that additional land, it would seem like they would have additional space for parking. So I'm wondering, did the owner create this problem?
Sorry, I would like to mention that when they sold this out parcel, if it was retail before, since the parcel has to have its own parking requirements and it's a restaurant, which is it's already the minimum required at 100 square feet. So actually removing that use probably, even though they lost that parking, the Chick-fil-A was existing, they have their own parking requirements, but it's not a self-created hardship, because even though they sold that land, they weren't changing the parking any, because the parking went associated with the use.
Well, they weren't changing the parking, but they were eliminating land that they owned that they could construct future parking, which is the issue today.
Right, but it was already developed, is what I was saying. But I'll let the applicant speak more to that, if they'd like to.
Well, I remember the Chick-fil-A being built a few years ago, so it's not that old.
I think there was a prior use. I'm looking at old aerials. I don't have that specific information, but so it may have been something else. I just don't know. I apologize.
Yeah, it was built about 5 years ago, because that's close to where I live. My next question is, one of the findings we have to make is that the regulations cause a hardship. And I'm not seeing a hardship today. I'm seeing a potential hardship tomorrow. But that would be speculative. So could you address the issue? Does a hardship exist today?
I would say that the hardship in particular is the requirement of 10 spaces per 1,000 square foot for restaurants, regardless of their actual type and operation, and requiring an excess of parking, against a lot of the other city objectives in this particular type of land use. when it's clearly been demonstrated that parking is not needed based on both national data and actual counts at the site. Danielle, would you add anything to that?
I think that sums it up well.
So what I'm hearing is, I do not dispute what you said. It strikes me as logical. That what I'm hearing is a problem with the policy decision on parking made by the town council and their requirements. As a board, we don't get into that. We address a specific hardship. So when I was reading this, I was looking for a specific use that had been a specific tenant or prospective tenant who wanted to move in and was being prevented due to this regulation. And I didn't see that. So I understood the logic to wanting this change so that your client wouldn't be hassled, forever, as every time something comes up. Plus, there's a certain delay and hassle associated with getting a variance. But as a board member, our finding is, does a hardship exist today? And I'm not seeing one today. And I don't think we're allowed to get into speculating about tomorrow. But I wanted to give you a chance. I was going to mention that later when we discuss it, but I want to give you a chance to counter that or express. Right. And in fact, let me stop for a moment and give you a chance.
I appreciate that. I guess what I would say specific to your point about a tenant that wants to lease space here, and this would, a pizza restaurant that has no dining would certainly not, it would not be appropriate to require that restaurant 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Danielle, what is the square footage of the specific lease area that Little Caesars in this case would occupy?
1,992 square feet.
So 20 parking spaces for a pickup restaurant that probably has something on the order of 3 employees. And and people coming and going, but rarely any accumulation of people there. So that we would describe that as a hardship specific to this situation, but also to other users in this type of development where very small spaces carved up that that are kind of attractive for restaurants that have a high degree of pickup.
So a clarification to either the applicant or staff, this specific proposal does not address a specific business. It's looking at the shopping center as a whole. Am I correct on that?
Yes, the initial request was driven by a specific tenant. And in discussing at the pre-application meeting was to apply a variance for the entirety of the shopping center should any future new tenants come in that would require additional parking. So it was driven by one tenant, but was decidedly to be applied to the entirety of the shopping center to avoid any further parking issues down the line.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the applicant?
I have one more, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Chad.
Somebody else? Thank you. Just so that I wanted to be sure that I understood that the hardship that we're dealing with here is that this site is built out or it's full. That's the hardship, right?
Correct. I'll add a little more information. In 2018, a different consultant hired by the landowner went through an exercise where they maximized and added as many parking space as feasible on the site. That included striping out any applicable space that could be additional parking. That included maxing out the number of compact parking spaces and adding landscape islands if needed as feasible. So that was another exercise that we looked into is there any other feasible location we could add parking? And reviewing the site plan as is, we could not. There was also opportunities to add some in the Harris Teeter, but there is in their lease agreement, which was also submitted to Cole as evidence on this, that nothing can be modified in their parking field. So as the site plan stands, it's absolutely maxed out on feasible parking spaces as outlined in the City of Durham UDO.
And one follow on, there's no legal requirement for this shopping center developer or the owner to accommodate any additional uses. They're not legally bound. The site is full. There's no legal requirement for them or for no force that's acting upon them that's compelling them to put in additional stuff. If additional stuff went in, it was because they wanted to put in additional stuff or a tenant wanted to change. Is that right?
There's some vacancy. So I'm not sure that's the way I would describe it.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, is there anyone who wishes to speak, anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this case? All right, anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this case? Seeing none, hearing none. All right, one more chance for questions for the applicant or staff. All right, well, let's bring it some discussion with the board. Thoughts on this particular case that you may not have brought up before or want to reiterate?
This is Chad. I'll share my thoughts. The line of reasoning that David was using was one that I thought was outstanding. I agree with him 100%. I don't believe that a hardship has been shown in accordance with the criteria that we need to use to evaluate this request. It may well be that the standards are inappropriate or antiquated or problematic, but the issue before us is here's a site, it has a lot of parking but not enough. We don't know what kind of uses we're going to have in the future, but we just want to have this number of parking, and we could, you know, basically go forward with anything that we wanted without having to worry about the parking standards in the future. I'm not sure. To me, that's not the purpose of a variance, and so I'm not going to be able to support this. Thanks.
Dave?
I agree with that. I want to I want to add to that this shopping center is a real asset to the community. Putting in the Harris Teeter when there was that vacant space, I live near there, was a wonderful improvement. And I am sympathetic and don't dispute some of the engineers' points about the parking requirements being unreasonable or at least not applicable. It's just that when I hear that, I'm thinking that's really an issue for the town council that sets those requirements rather than me, even though I'm sympathetic. Also, if a new business really wants to go in, at least that couldn't, then at least we could be dealing with the hardship today. I don't feel we're able to help for potential future hardship. We're just not allowed to engage in that kind of speculation. So for those reasons, I don't think the applicant meets the requirement that there's an existing hardship.
Are there any other thoughts? All right. This is a variance, so there's a no staff recommendation. I can offer the applicant two things. I can call for a motion and a vote. See how that goes. Or we could also push this case to the next meeting if you needed more time to come up with more information. And I'll kick that back over to you for thoughts.
Gonna think out loud, Richard. I think we may potentially elect to defer. As mentioned, the additional parking reduction from the 5% transit to the 10% transit was not caught during site plan staff review. So the site plans have been updated to implement that reduction, but have yet to be reviewed. So I think I want to make sure that staff agrees with that reduction. I'm sure they will, to approve our site plan, as that was the last outstanding comment. So I think I want to make sure that that final comment is implemented into the site plan and approved as the plan is currently in review. So I'd like to defer just as a contingency in case there's some sort of hiccup with that.
All right. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
And we can certainly follow back up once we hear from review if we need to take different action.
And I think all you need is 4 votes for this to pass. Is that right, Chris, or 5?
5 is
It's 5.
5. So you'd need everyone else to vote in favor today.
Right. And just to speak what Daniel says is she's correct. The additional 5% reduction they added will actually they'll be able to meet parking requirements from the site plan review standpoint before this variance, because before they were just adding a 5% reduction, and they've increased that to 10%, which is allowed by the UDO.
All right. So if we defer, then you won't be coming back anyway. Is that what I'm understanding? All right. So do you want to defer? You don't want us to take a vote on this right now? I don't mind calling for a vote or a motion.
Yeah, as far as additional information for the question at hand, I'm not sure. And again, I apologize, we're thinking out loud here in real time. I'm not sure what additional information might look like, given the data we have with the actual parking counts. I'm not as versed in what constitutes a hardship type question. I do just struggle with the broad-based implication of restaurant for inline shopping center type restaurants, which, like I said before, have a very different parking demand than a sit-down restaurant where people spend hours at a time there, and that's what's going on here. And that's why the actual parking demand here obviously is much less than what's required by the UDO. So I mean, it probably wouldn't hurt to get a vote right now, just to because, like I said, I think it's obviously not going to be a problem, but
okay.
And so hopefully that might win the day.
No, I totally understand, and I'll be supporting. But before we call for a motion, does any other board member want to give a final chance to offer any thoughts on this one? If not, does anyone care to make a motion? All All right, even if you're voting, if you don't want to vote for this, you can still make the motion to approve and then vote a different way. Or
Mr. Chair, I think it's appropriate. If you wanted to, you could make the motion.
oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah.
All right, well, I don't have the verbiage in front of me.
Retchless, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mike.
I hereby make a motion that case number B21000055, an application for a request for a variance from the parking requirements on property located at 3409 Hillsborough Road, has successfully met the applicable requirements of a Unified Development Ordinance and is hereby granted subject to the following conditions: that improvements shall be substantially consistent with the plans and all information submitted to the board as part of the application.
We've got a motion for approval by Mr. Retchless. Is there a second? Brian, do I make the second?
You can.
Okay, well, Roger's on the second. That's the first as a chair I've ever done. Terry, will you call the roll?
Yes, Kip,
No.
Meadows,
No.
Paletta,
No.
Rogers,
Yes.
Retchless,
And I vote no, since I made a motion.
You can.
Yes, I vote no. It's no.
Wymore,
Tisha?
Wymore.
Yeah, one more, you're muted.
Oh, she might be frozen.
It looks like she is.
Bushane.
No.
Okay, motion fails
5-1.
5-1, yeah.
All right. By a vote of 5-1, your request for a variance has failed for approval. Wish you the best of luck, and thanks for coming this morning to the BOA. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
All
Thank y'all
right.
for your time today.
Thank you. Terry, would you like to call the next case?
Yes. My notes. One second, I'm sorry. Hang on just one second. I have misplaced my minutes. I will find them and read them. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Here we go. It's coming up. Okay. The next case is, let's see, is B21000056. It's a city case. It's a request for a variance from an infill development street yard standards. The subject site is located at 1315 Clarendon Street, as zoned residential urban, and it's in the urban tier. This case has been advertised for the required period of time, and notarized affidavits verifying the sign postings and letter mailings are on file. And seated for this case is Kip, Meadows, Paletta, Rogers, Retchless, Wymore, and Bushane.
All right, instead of Wymore, Mike Tarrant will be seated for this one.
Okay.
All right. All right, let's do the oath real quick. If you plan to speak on this case, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give today is the truth and nothing but the truth? Joe?
Joe, you're muted. Yeah,
Unmute
sorry.
yourself.
All right. Hello.
Okay. And do you consent to this remote meeting platform?
I do.
All right, thank you, sir. Cole, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Good morning again. I'm Cole Renninger, representing the Plan Department. Planning staff requested the staff report and all materials submitted at the public hearing be made part of the public record at this time, with any necessary corrections as noted.
So noted. Thank you, sir.
Case B 21-00056 is a request for a variance from the infill development street yard setback. The case area is highlighted in red. This site is in the urban tier, zone residential urban RU52, and is within the city of Durham's jurisdiction. The existing use is currently vacant. Sorry, it is not. It is a single family home at this time. Joe Breen, applicant, requests a variance from the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO section 6.8, infill development street yards setback standards in order to construct a duplex structure located at 1315 Clarendon Street. Subject site is on residential urban RU52 and is in the urban development tier. Per section 7.1.6B of the UDO, the required street yard setback for a single family dwelling structure in the RU zone district is 20 feet. The infill development standards for street yards found in UDO section 6.8 are applicable to the site, as it is residentially zoned lots less than 4 acres within the urban tier. Within the infill development standards, a context area is used to determine the required yards as well as the building height of the subject lot. The context area consists of existing residentially zoned structures along the same block face. New development on a lot subject to the infill standards would have to use a street yard that is ranged from the existing street yards along the block face. The applicant is requesting a variance from the infill standards to place the home 56 feet and 8 inches from the street behind the prescribed 16-foot private drainage easement with an additional 2-foot no-build setback required by the City Public Works Department. So to explain this plat you're seeing right now, the applicant is only wishing to go further back because of the proposed 16-foot wide private drainage easement that runs through this property. And staff is available for any questions at this time.
All right, any questions for staff? Chad, you were first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Cole. I appreciated this case. It helped remind me that a residential structure has to comply with the infill standards. You know, a front yard setback is a minimum most of the time. But in this instance, because it's infill, there's a minimum and a maximum range to this site. Do you know off the top of your head what is the range that would apply to this site?
I do not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I will allow the applicant to speak to this because I'm sure that's something they did in their research.
Okay, so next question that I have on this one is, I understand that the applicant wants to locate the structure outside of the context area because of an easement that's noted as a private drainage easement. And here's my question, and this might be a better question for the applicant. I just want to understand if you guys have studied this at all. Isn't there a house on top of this easement right now? And if that's the case, why? And isn't there a house on top of the easement on lot number 12 owned by Peter Eversole? And if so, why? And then to I guess it's the north, the Three Amigos real estate investments. It appears though there's a house on top of so I don't understand where this easement is coming from. Is this new? Is this necessary? Because it looks like these 3 lots are already built. So I was confused by that. Thank you.
Yeah. So just to be clear, is if you look on the plat, the easement is actually a proposed 16-foot wide drainage easement. So it is not existing at this time. I believe there is a pipe there already. But when it was built, there was no easement for maintenance required by the city public requirement. The new construction when the new construction goes in, that's something the city public requirement will want, that private drainage easement for maintenance. But as of right now, the easement is there. I believe the pipe's existing, but not the easement itself.
I see. So the existing structure is going to be torn down, and when it's torn down, it's the new construction that triggers the requirement that the new building be outside of the easement. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mike Tarrant, I see that you have a question.
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Cole. Similarly to Mr. Mehta's questions, I was kind of puzzled to see that this pipe passes under at least 6 existing structures. Has there been any conversation with Public Works about locating that within the right of way? I hate for future development to modify the infill standards and kind of create an awkward block just to avoid a pipe that seems like it shouldn't be there.
So, like I said, the pipe's existing. I don't think Public Works has any plans at this time to relocate that pipe. And I think that's an extensive cost because, like you said, it does run through 6 lots. So there would be an extensive amount of pipe that they have to move. And they would, if they were going to move this pipe, I don't know if they'd have to, divert any land from other property owners, and to I guess maintain that, because like I said, there is no easement on this pipe, so they technically have no maintenance rights over the pipe as of right now. So there would have to be I think some other processes involved in that to move it, unless they were just to divert it. But there hasn't been any Public Works conversation that they've expressed to me, at least.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Cole before we hear from the applicant? All right. Would the applicant like to come forward and give us a little more information about this project?
Okay. Yes, I think Cole covered most of it, but I will say there's an existing duplex there now. So there's an existing duplex there. And this is really our only option here. We can't reroute the pipe because of the width of the new easements that is required. And this is not a unique situation. I've had this come up more than twice, but we've always been able to reroute the storm sewer to the road, but we're not able to do that in this situation just because it's on both sides of the property. We couldn't do that and have it drained properly. But yes, that pipe does go under probably 7 or 8 houses. So,
makes sense.
Yeah, this may not be the last time that this comes up.
Joe, would you like another question I have to ask? Would you like your written and oral testimony to be part of the record?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. All right. Any questions for the applicant? All right. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application for a variance, request for a variance? Is there anyone here to speak against this request for a variance? Seeing and hearing none. All right. Discussion. Thoughts?
So this is Meadows. I mean, obviously there's a pipe here that's under the house, under lots of houses, which is obviously not our issue today. Troubling deeply, yes, but not the issue today. So we've got an infill requirement that must be applied. The UDO says you got to follow the infill standards on this site. So we don't have a choice. There's a minimum and a maximum setback. The house, the duplex to be built must stay out of an easement due to city policy, and avoiding that easement, and frankly not building over the pipe, which is a good idea no matter how you look at it, requires us to vary the infill stuff. The infill stuff is designed to stop this exact kind of placement of the structure, so that there's a uniform street edge or building edge along the street. And I don't know, guys. I mean, I see the hardship here. and I see that it's not something that's, that this applicant has created. It's certainly not unique to this lot. We've established that there are numerous lots that are going to be faced with this challenge should those homes be built. So, in light of that, I guess I find myself in strange territory where I want to approve this variance, even though what would result is exactly contrary to what the intent of the standards were. And I'm not sure there's any easy way to meet the spirit and intent of the standard. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about how this could be done to maintain some sort of semblance of the intent of the rule, which is a uniform building facade along the street. I hope that wiser minds among us can answer that question. So I don't know. This is a yucky one from my perspective. Thank you.
Very well put. David?
In addition to that, it looks like in the adjoining properties, given the angle of the pipe, that they would be prohibited from, they couldn't meet the requirements. This lot seems a little bit lucky that it can barely meet the requirements. So the only solution that comes to mind, which is outside of our power, is for the city to reroute the drainage pipe, which is not unusual. I've represented cities that do that very thing for these kind of situations. Again, that's not within our jurisdiction, but it seems like at least Public Works ought to think about it. Somebody should raise that question with them. That's the only, and that would allow the spirit of the ordinance to be carried out. But nothing we can do about that one.
Well put again. Any other thoughts? Yeah, I'm stuck with this one. This is something that I don't see anything around than approving a variance for something like this. Other than rerouting, like David said, which is outside of what we're doing here. Any other thoughts from board members?
I will say, I guess it's not my turn. I'm sorry.
You go ahead, Joe, if you'd like.
Yeah, I just don't. Working with Public Works engineering on a daily basis, I think you can forget rerouting that storm sewer. I don't see that happening unless a developer pays for it.
Who owns multiple properties right there. All right, Chad, you got something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question. Maybe it's for staff, maybe it's for the attorney. What happens if something happens to that pipe underneath somebody else's house? What happens? Can anybody tell me what happens?
That would probably be a Public Works question. I would assume though it would be an emergency situation where they were allowed to intervene. But I don't know for sure at this time without consulting Public Works.
David has a good idea what happened.
That has happened now, and there is even without a written easement, there's it's most likely there's an easement by prescription where they have the right to make repairs to an existing easement. Usually what happens is Public Works gets involved and they do reroute it when it's a crisis.
Hey, Chad.
One more question, and this is a question for staff. So, as I understand it, the infill standards are based on context. The approval of this variance would allow this proposed duplex to move 50 feet back from the lot line. if somebody else were to come along and reconstruct a site on one of these lots affected by this pipe, would they be able to reestablish a new structure as far back? Would they be able to avail themselves of the context that we would create by approval of this variance?
I don't believe so, because this was approved in a variance. So variance is specific to the site, so not the context area. So the variance would not, it does not fall within the UDO code. So they would still have to meet the infill standards for the original block face, not including Clarendon Street, because it was approved outside the ordinance. Well, inside, yeah, with a variance. Sorry.
All right, any other discussion? Thoughts?
Let me just chime in. We live in an old city. There is old infrastructure, and I agree with Mr. Barini. The engineering folks are not going to be able to reroute that infrastructure. So that being said, I'll just leave that there. So I don't think rerouting the infrastructure is an option.
Thanks, Ian. Anyone else? Would anyone like to offer a motion?
I will.
Hold on, we got some talking here. What's going on? Who's Meadows?
I was going to say I would. Go ahead. Go ahead, Meadows. I'll second it.
Yes, ma'am. I hereby make a motion that application number B21000056, a request for a variance from the infill development street yard standards on property located at 1315 Clarendon Street, has successfully met the applicable requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance and is hereby granted subject to the following conditions. 1, the improvements shall be substantially consistent with the plans and all information submitted to the board as part of this application.
We have a motion for approval by Mr. Meadows. Is there a second?
Beauchene, second.
Beauchene on the second.
Okay, Kip,
Yes.
okay, Meadows,
Yes.
Paletta,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Retchless,
Yes.
Tarrant,
Yes.
and Beauchene.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, by a vote of 7-0, your request for a variance has been approved. We wish you the best of luck and thank you for coming before the BOA this morning.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're at 9:42. Does anybody want to take a quick break, or you'd like to get back into the cases? Natalie, all right, let's do, you know what? How about it's 9:42, we'll be back at 9:50? Is that fine? 8 minutes? All right, so we'll reconvene at 9:50. Just for the record, I don't think Tisha's going to be joining us for the rest of the meeting. I got a text from her. They're doing some construction on her street there, and it looks like they may have knocked out the internet for a bit. So
Do we need to excuse her for good cause? No, okay.
all right, looks like we have everybody here. Terry, would you like to call the next case?
Sure would. Let's see. I found my paper. It's a city case. It's a request for a minor special use permit for an increase in height of a non-conforming structure. The subject site is located at 3308 Virginia Avenue. It's zoned residential suburban 8, and it's in the urban tier. And this case has been advertised for the required period of time, and notarized affidavits are on file in the planning department. The seating for this case is Kip, Meadows, Paletta, Rogers, Retchless, Tarrant, and Bouchane.
All righty. Let's administer the oath real quick. If you plan on giving testimony in this case, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give today is the truth and nothing but the truth? Daryl Fruth?
I do.
And do you consent to this remote meeting platform?
I do.
Thank you, sir. All right, Cole, this one's yours.
Yeah. It is.
Go ahead.
Good morning again. I'm Cole Renegger, representing the Plan Department. Planning staff requests the staff report and all materials submitted to the public hearing to be made part of the public record with any necessary corrections as noted.
So noted. Thank you.
Case B 21-00057 is a request from a minor special use permit for an increase in height of a non-conforming structure. The case area is highlighted in red. The site is in the urban tier, zoned residential RS8, and within the city of Durham's jurisdiction. The existing use is a single-family dwelling. Daryl Fruth, the applicant and property owner, requests a minor special use permit to add a second floor to the non-conforming existing accessory structure to be used as an accessory dwelling unit ADU. The current height is 12 feet and will not be taller than the existing home, which is 25 feet tall. The applicant will also be adding a new exterior set of stairs for second floor entry. The site is on residential RS8 and is in the urban development tier. The original accessory structure does not conform to the setback requirement of 9 feet for its accessory structures in the RS8 zone district. Currently, the structure is only 3 feet from the side property line, which is why it is not conforming. Per Unified Development Ordinance Section 14.4.1C1.A, minor special use permit is required for any increase of height of any non-conforming structure. I would like to mention that during the introduction, I believe Terry misspoke saying it was 3001 Virginia Avenue. It is actually 1308 Virginia Avenue, just to clarify. And staff will be available for any questions.
All right, thanks, Cole. Are there any questions for Cole before we hear from the applicant? Hearing none, seeing none, would the applicant like to come forward, give us a little more information or what they'd like about this case?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Daryl Fruth. My wife and I have owned the property since 2005. We have really gotten to know our neighbors and really like our neighborhood. We've both served on the neighborhood board association. We walked our children to the neighborhood elementary school. We really want to stay in the area. We're just finding that we need more space. And so we would like to build that. We'd like to build an apartment over the garage to give us some space. Need a special use permit. I don't know that I have a lot to add. We submitted some photos so you can kind of get a sense of how the use will fit into the existing, like our property, which I think it will look pretty, I think it's going to look very good. I think it's going to have a very similar look and feel. Photos also show that that what's on the other side of that kind of non-conforming use is a fence in a yard. And so it's not like we're going to build right up next to someone's house. I feel like it's, there's several other ADUs in our area. I think it's a much better solution than knocking things down and building big ugly houses. So I ask that you approve this minor special use permit, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. I know we've got, let's go ahead and take a look at these photos first, since you,
Sure.
You want to walk us through some of these, Mr. Frith?
Absolutely, yeah. So you'll see our home is on the right there. And what we're talking about doing is adding a garage over adding an apartment over the garage that you see. So there'll still be the 2 spaces for cars. We charge a car in one of them. And we just built above there. And if you go to the next photo, it kind of shows what's on the other side. So this is the non-conforming side, is from the garage to the right. And I think it shows that there shouldn't be any major effect on the neighbors by us just building up there.
All right, those are only 2 pictures. Good deal. All right, Chad, I think you had your hand up first. You've got a question for the applicant.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Daryl, and I appreciate what you're proposing here. So you're adding some living space to the second story. Here is my question: is the existing garage going to be removed, or will you be cutting the roof off of the existing garage and using the existing building?
We're going to keep the existing building, and we're just going to cut off the roof and build up.
Thank you.
All right, Mike Tarrant.
Good morning, Mr. Fruth. I just wanted to confirm that garage was existing when you purchased the property in 2005. Is that accurate?
It is. And in fact, the garage was being used for residential use before we bought the property. And our property was actually condemned many years before we bought it. So yeah, that garage has been there for a while. I don't know exactly when. I'm thinking maybe the 60s. Our house was built in 38, but I think the garage was maybe a more recent construction, given the spacing of given how it was built. Based on how it was built, I would think like between the 60s and the 80s is when it was built.
All right.
Thank you.
Mike Rachels. Mike, did that take care of your question?
No, I'm sorry. I was muted. Hi, Mr. Fruth. Thank you, Chairman. Is there a stairwell going on the outside of that footprint?
Yeah, the stairwell will be on the east side. So as you're looking at this photograph, it would be on kind of the left side.
Correct.
So that we can get up to it, yeah.
And there'll be some trees removed, it looks like.
I don't know that I don't think we're planning to remove any trees. We did trim some trees back so that there's
Gotcha.
some space.
So you're not removing trees. Just kind of wanted to see if there was an overlay protection plan for trees in your neighborhood.
I don't know if there is, but we're not planning to remove trees. In fact, we would very much like to keep the trees.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right, Natalie.
Yes, thank you. So this would be like a separate dwelling. It will not be attached to your house at all.
That's correct. I mean, obviously it's on our property and it will be attached to our garage, which we're going to continue to use as a garage. But it would be a separate dwelling that we intend to use for ourselves, initially at least.
David, I caught you right when you took a sip.
My main concern about this proposal is if the neighbor who adjoins, whose property adjoins the garage has concerns or objections because it has an aesthetic impact on that one side. Have you spoken with the neighbor? Do you have any information about that particular neighbor?
Yeah, I've spoken to both of our immediate next door neighbors. The neighbors on the east side of us, Bob and Sarah, are enthusiastically supporting. Sarah has volunteered to decorate our apartment when we built it. And she was raised in the neighborhood, born and raised in the neighborhood, very much support it. I talked to our neighbor on the, I guess it's the south side, Lindsay, and showed her the plans and everything. She didn't say that she opposed it. And I think that she's considering doing something similar, but if she did it, it would be on the back side of her property. Like, I don't know if you can see, if you go to the different picture, she has an existing garage. And I think that, I mean, obviously I can't speak for her, but she mentioned that she had, at least in the past, considered building up over her garage, which is on the far side of the property.
Yeah, so I'll mention that we can't take, testimony that, of what someone else said that isn't here, but we certainly can take the testimony that you have spoken to these individuals. I'll also mention that they were given notice of this meeting through the city for this as well. There was notification of property owners. Dave, do you have anything else to add? Okay, just want to make sure. Mike Terry?
Yeah, just one clarification. I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, Mr. Fruit, but it wasn't clear to me in the materials that were in the application. Do you know by chance what the difference in elevation is between the peak of the roof of the existing garage and the proposed roof elevation of the addition?
I don't know that off the top of my head. But I mean, obviously we are building a whole living structure there. So, it's going to probably be, I mean, there is going to be an addition. So maybe going from 12 feet to 20 feet, something like that. I mean, I don't know exactly. I know that the overall it's going to be lower than our existing house. But I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't remember how much lower.
That's fine. I was just curious, just looking at the diagrams, it doesn't appear that, visually it would be a full story looking at the schematics and then what, the height of the peak of the roof today. So I was just curious if you knew what the difference in that elevation might be. But
I don't, and you probably see that the roof is not proposed to be flat. It's more like a shed. And so it would be the highest kind of farthest from there. And I wish I could tell you what that maximum height is, but I just don't know it.
All right. Any other?
I was going to.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it might be shown on one of the drawings, but I don't know that it is, so I won't make us go through all of them.
It says 35 feet there on that last drawing, on that first drawing.
That seems rather high to me.
All right. Chad, do you have a question?
I do, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry that I forgot to ask it of staff when staff was presenting. Is this site in a floodplain or a special flood hazard area?
Sorry, just 1 second.
That was for staff, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. So this is not in a special flood. Sorry, I believe it is in a special watershed protection overlay. However, it's not adding any impervious surface that would bring it over the maximum.
Okay.
The stairs are probably over or new, but they're not increasing it over the threshold that's allowed.
Right. So not in a special flood hazard area or a floodplain.
Right. Correct. Not in a floodplain, but in a watershed protection overlay district.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome.
All right, any further questions of the applicant? All right, Cole, would you mind? Thank you. Is there a recommendation? Oh, first of all, is there anyone else to speak in favor of this application for a request for a minor special use permit? All right, seeing none, is there anyone here to speak against this request for a minor special use permit? Seeing none on there. Cole, do you have a recommendation for the group?
Yes, staff recommends approval with all the necessary documents that were submitted.
Okay. All right, discussion on the board. Thoughts? I don't mind starting. ADUs have been a priority item throughout the triangle, not just in Durham, but certainly with spending housing choices that was started a couple years ago, I guess now. And given that there's no, basically it's taken an existing structure and raising it a little further up, I'm certainly in favor of such application. And Mike, I know I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Meadows. Excuse me, Mr. Rogers. I certainly, I agree with you. When I look at the plans and elevations that were submitted, I feel that it responds nicely to the architecture in the rear of the existing home, as it relates to being consistent with the harmony and of the surrounding area. Looks like the property across Wilson Street actually has a second floor deck as well. So I feel like that complements that nicely, and certainly support reuse and renovation of the existing structures versus expanding impervious surface and tearing down and building new. So I'm inclined to support this application.
Well said. Is there anyone else?
Retchless, I support what Mr. Tarrant says. I think it's a good addition to the neighborhood.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mike. All right, does anyone want to offer a motion?
I will.
All right, Natalie.
I hereby make a motion that application number B 21-00057, a request for a minor special use permit on property located at 1308 Virginia Avenue, has successfully met the applicable requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance and is hereby granted subject to the following conditions. The improvement shall be substantially consistent with the plans and all information submitted to the board as part of this application.
All right, just a point of clarification, is it 1308 or 3308?
1308.
1308 Virginia.
Okay, on the agenda, it's 33. I just wanted to clarify that. All right, thank you. We've got a motion for approval by Natalie Beauchesne. Is there a second?
Meadows, second.
Meadows on the second. Terry, would you like to take it away?
Yes. Kip,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Paletta,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Retchless,
Yes.
Tarrant,
Yes.
Bushane.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, by a vote of 7-0, your request for a minor special use permit has been granted. We thank you for coming before the BOA this morning and wish you the best of luck in this one.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time.
Have a good day. All right. For our next case, Mike Tarrant has already announced he'll be recusing, so that brings us down to 6 board meeting members seated for this next case, which is fine. Like the applicant, is the applicant here? Chris?
Sorry, I'm promoting them right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So with this,
Chair, we have one more. Sorry.
Oh.
Do we, pardon the question, but do we need to excuse the board member?
No. That's what I'm getting to.
Oh.
There's one more, or Cole.
Yeah, I'm trying to switch them over right now.
Looks like we have two Tim Somervilles.
Oh, then he's probably submitted then and just it didn't switch over. So he is presenting. He should be good now. Then we have everybody then.
Okay. Well, with this, what it means is that we've got we'll have 6 instead of 7. In these instances, we usually give the applicant the option for continuance, but the 3/5 voting requirement means that 4 of the board members would need to vote in favor of this. So I just wanted to, we can certainly proceed, or we could continue just because of the board count. So Tim, are you the one heading this one?
Yeah, I'm Tim Somerville. Yeah, we can proceed with the current count.
All right, just wanted to let you know. And Mike, if you want to just turn your video off, that way we'll know. Mike Terry, thank you, sir. All right, we're going to administer the oath. If you don't mind, please raise your right hand. And Connell Smallwood, I need your video on too if you plan on giving testimony.
Yeah, I do not plan to do any testimony. We're just here as a representative of the Brandon condominium.
Perfect. All right. So we'll minister the oath. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give today is the truth and nothing but the truth? Tim?
I do.
Darren?
I do.
And do you consent to this remote meeting platform? Darren?
I do.
Tim?
I do.
All righty then. Let's get this one started. Terry, would you like to call? You didn't even call this case.
I was going to speak up.
Thanks.
Okay, so it's B 22-0001, 4 zeros and 1. It's a city case. It's a request for a variance from the ceiling height for structured parking, structured parking, ground floor frontage, use in the design district. It's located at 331 Roney Street, and it's zoned downtown design core, and it's in the downtown tier. The case has been advertised for the required period of time and is notarized affidavits are on file for sign postings and letter mailings. Seating for this case is Kip, Meadows, Paletta, Rogers, Retchless, and Bushane.
All right. Well, we've already done the oath. We've consented. So we'll turn this one over to Cole.
Good morning. Again, I'm Cole Renegger, representing the Planning Department. Planning staff requested the staff report and all materials submitted at the public hearing to be made part of the public record with any necessary corrections as noted.
Thank you. So noted.
Case B 22-0001, a request for a variance from the ceiling height for structured parking, ground floor frontage uses in the design district. The case area is highlighted in red. The site is downtown tier, zoned design downtown core, and is in with the city of Durham's jurisdiction. The existing use right now is just ground floor parking. Tim Somerville, applicant, requests a variance from the Unified Development Ordinance, section UDO 16.3.2A.3 for a variance from the ceiling height for structured parking ground floor frontage uses in design districts. The subject site is zoned design downtown core, DDC, and is located in the downtown development tier per section 16.3.2A.3 of the UDO. The minimum ceiling height for a structured parking ground for frontage use must be 14 feet. The applicant reduces to width the height to 10 and 11 feet in 2 separate locations. The project is an extension of an existing parking garage, so all floor levels must be the same elevation for vehicle movement between floors. This restricts the height in 2 locations. Location 1, as shown on the floor plan, is adjacent to the entrance off Hunt Street and cannot meet the height requirement without dropping the floor 4 feet below the street level due to the topography of Hunt Street. Location 2 is adjacent to the existing park garage and has encroaching footing in the frontage space that prevents it from reaching the minimum height. Staff will be able to waive for questions, and if the applicant would like me to show additional documents, I do have those pulled up.
All right, thanks, Cole. Chad, you've got a question?
I do, thank you. Good morning, Cole. I think you answered my question, but I want to be sure that I understood. I had a hard time reading these site plans because there's no roads marked. So the location 1 shown on the screen in red faces north, faces Hunt Street. The location 2 in blue is on the eastern side of the proposed building and is adjacent to, I guess, Roney Street. Is that?
So location 1 is actually not adjacent to the street. I believe that's correct. I think location 1, I'll let Tim answer that, but I think location 1 is already, is that adjacent to the proposed parking deck, Tim?
No, what Mr. Meadows
Sorry.
said is correct. Location
Okay.
1 is on the
Sorry.
north side of the building. That would be Hunt Street, running along location 1. And then location 2 is located on the east side of the deck, located along Roney Street. And then to the south, bottom of your screen here would be the existing deck.
Thank you. So the follow-on question is the purpose for the ceiling height requirement in a parking deck is to facilitate utilization of the ground floor for a use other than parking. And is that, Cole, is what's bringing location 2 to our attention and causing it to be part of this application is the fact that it abuts Roney Street. Is that right? Am I thinking about that the right way? I wasn't entirely sure about if you could put the site plan back, that I would really.
Well, I was actually gonna pull up an
okay.
additional document that may help show it better.
Okay.
So just give me one moment, please. My screen went away for a second. Oh, sorry, wrong screen share. So here's the location that I believe you're mentioning. Is that correct?
Yes.
So here is what is here's the issue right here. There's this I guess this structure right here. It's part of that would go into the existing one. It would, I believe that's I believe this is what Tim, could you speak to this? I believe this is because there's an existing.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
And Darren, with his architect on here, he may be able to weigh in as well. But what the issue is here is that this location, as you can see to the south, is abutting against the existing parking deck. When that existing parking deck was built 4 or 5 years ago, that there wasn't this requirement for the 14-foot clear ceiling height. So the adjacent existing parking deck does not have that 14-foot clear. So when this new parking deck is constructed next to it and we drop it to the 14-foot clear, as you can see in the foreground, the actual footing, structural footing of that existing deck will be exposed. And that's what's shown in the back. In that blue would actually be the existing footing from that existing deck because it wasn't required to meet that 14-foot clear ceiling height. So everything to the foreground of that blue area will meet the 14-foot, but that exposed footing will prevent us from meeting that. And I believe the clear height will be 10 foot from top of that footing to the bottom of the next floor above.
Okay, thank you. One last follow-on. Just I don't want to get into your presentation, but I believe that. Well, let me ask the question. If the footing is there, I'm looking at the image marked shown open. This ground floor area can still meet the intent of the standard in terms of configuration for something other than parking and perhaps even operation as something other than parking, even though there is this footer or this blue thing or this gizmo that's shown back there. Is that, sorry to use those technical terms, but is that right?
That's correct. So everything in the foreground will meet that 14-foot clear height. It'll be available for lease for retail space to meet the intent of the ordinance. The space in blue won't have the 14-foot. It'll be 10, but it's still utilized as a 10-foot ceiling height. It's been discussed. It could be as space for mechanical rooms. It could be storage for the retail space, perhaps kitchen space if it's a restaurant. And then above, another option that was discussed was just screening it off. So from the street level, it would still have a storefront, windows. It just wouldn't be occupied space. So it really comes down to whoever leases the space, what they want to do with it. But what we're here for today is just noting that space will not meet the 14-foot clear.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Cole? All right, Tim, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and Cole, do you have the 3D rendering that you could bring up?
I do. Give me one moment.
And Tim, would you like all of your written and
yes,
testimony to be part of the record?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Can everyone see the 3D rendering now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, as Cole mentioned, this is an extension to the existing Durham ID parking deck that was completed, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago. So this is a rendering. You can see to the left the existing deck, and to the right is the proposed deck. This extension was always planned, but couldn't be built at the time due to budget constraints when the original deck was built. But when it's all said and done, this is going to serve as one deck. There's a current entrance to the south along, which is Roney Street as well, and then you can see an entrance along Roney Street there, and then our proposed entrance on Hunt. But once you're inside the deck, vehicles will be able to go back and forth between the two. And as you can see too, the decks are somewhat different in their facades. And the reason for that is when the original deck was permitted, it was under a different UDO requirements for structured parking. Since then, there's been some pretty dramatic changes in the UDO in regards to structured parking. One is this 14-foot clear height, but other is screening requirements. And then there's also a requirement for maximum height and step back. So, we've had extensive discussions with the planning department, and we're required to meet on this extension all UDO requirements that are in place as of our application submittal last summer. So we've gone through and we've met screening requirements, the facade requirements, the step back, as you can see in this image, the top steps back 10 feet, which is a requirement of the ordinance now that wasn't in place when the original deck was approved. And then we're also providing that 14-foot clear height to the furthest extent practical along both Hunt and Roney. But there are these two locations that it just wasn't possible to meet that 14-foot clear. The one was identified as location 1 along Hunt Street. And as you can see, Hunt Street has some pretty severe topo as it comes down the grade. So in order to keep the second floor at the same elevation, the only option we had to meet that 14-foot clear would be to lower that space, and it would have put it about 3 to 4 feet below the street level, which really would make it inaccessible for for a retail space or anything. What we are currently proposing is an 11-foot clear height, and this is where we are providing bike storage, the required bike storage for the parking garage that's necessary. So we're putting it in that room. So a little lower ceiling height. It won't be designated leasable area for retail, but will have the storefront requirements as met by the UDO. Then option 2 was the area over by the adjacent existing deck where that footing encroachment extends into that area, as we had previously discussed. So that's really all I had at this time. I'm available for questions. We also have Darren Lathan here, who is the architect. He was the design architect for the original deck you see to the left, and he's also the design architect for this new expansion, and he can provide any additional questions as well.
All right. Looks like we've got a question by Mr. Meadows for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Tim. So I just want to be sure that I understand what you're saying. The location 1 variance is being requested because the road, Hunt Street, is sloped in this area, and it's impossible to achieve a 14-foot first floor height without excavation, and the resulting space being 3 or 4 feet below street grade. So you're to meet the intent of the ordinance, you're putting bike storage there. And do you access the bike storage from the street so that that portion of the building facade has some sort of interaction or relationship to the street, or do you access the bike storage from elsewhere?
No, we do have a door. If you could see the opening for vehicle entrances in this rendering, just to the right of that, you can see a glass door. That is a storefront entrance that would lead you directly at grade into that bike room. The bike room is also accessible interior to the garage as well.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, Cole, would you mind stop sharing for a moment? Is there anyone here, anyone else here to speak in favor of this request for a variance? Is there anyone here to speak against this request for a variance? All right, final time. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Clarification? All right, this is a request for a variance, so there is no recommendation from staff. So let's just bring it back to the table for discussion. Any discussion points?
This is Meadows. I'll start. It seems like the street grade for Hunt Street is certainly a compelling reason for hardship on this site. We certainly wouldn't want them to regrade Hunt Street. So I think that I see that as a hardship for this particular property that's unique to this particular property. As far as the backside goes, I understand there's a footer there and that could interfere with the 14-foot clear area, but it looks like they have some alternatives there that are workable, whether that's back of house space or it's just walled off altogether. And there's still the ability to have storefront there, which I think meets the intent of the regulation. I also think the placement of the bike locker or room or the bike facilities, the fact that they're accessible from the Hunt Street facade does give some relationship to the street on that side of the building, and seems to really work hard to meet the intent of what the UDO is trying to achieve, which is a relationship to the street from the first floor of the building. So I definitely feel like there's some hardships there, and I feel like they have done the best they can do to address those and meet the intent of what was desired in the UDO. So I think that I'm going to support this, and thank you.
Well said, Chad. I think that I thought it was creative to some of the things they've added to meet that intent of the ordinance, and with the bike room and the accessibility of that as well. Certainly agree with you on the hardship or hardships. Does anybody want to offer anything else? Thoughts? Does anyone want to offer a motion? Oh, Dave.
I hereby make a motion that application number B22-00001, a request for a variance from the ceiling height for structured parking ground floor frontage uses in design districts on property located at 331 Roney Street has successfully met the applicable requirements of the UDO and is hereby granted, subject to the following conditions. The improvements shall be substantially consistent with the plans and all information submitted to the board as part of the application.
We have a motion for approval by David Paletta. Is there a second?
Retchless second.
Retchless on the second. Terry, would you like to take it away?
Yes, Kip,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Paletta,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Rutchless,
Yes.
and Bashane.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, by a vote of 6-0, your request for variance has been approved. Wish you the best of luck. Thank you for coming before the BOA this morning.
All right, thank you all.
Have a good day.
Bye.
All right. Moving along in this, any old business? I see none on the agenda. Any new business? I do have an announcement to make. Oh, Dave, do you have something before I make it?
Let's see. I haven't done any lobbying, which normally would be appropriate, but do any board members have an interest in starting at 9 o'clock instead of 8:30, or I'm just curious. If there's, where did 8:30 come from, and what about 9? Just curious.
I don't know the answer to that one. Brian, you got an idea?
Well, for at least the last 11 years, it's been 8:30. I think most of that is to accommodate applicants, to get as many applicants in as we possibly can. I think at some point it was probably even earlier than that. I think it was probably at 8 o'clock, but I think staff reports at 8, so that gives enough time for staff to get in, get prepared, and then attend the meeting. So I think that's how it's has come to start at 8:30.
Yeah.
I know that some of these days get really long, and to start at 9 o'clock would just make them even longer. So, that's the best I can add to that. It is the earliest board meeting that I have to attend, but with the crown comes much responsibility, Mr. Paletta.
I would like to mention that Historic Preservation Committee, which is HPC, has switched to 9 for virtual meetings. So it is obviously up to you guys. Brian is right that it does allow most applicants and more time for cases and less time of your day during that time. Also, just a change to the orders is we will not be voting on B21-00042, and we will not be voting on B21-0055.
Got it. David, I don't like early meetings either. I used to have a 7:30 meeting in Apex once a month, and when I got to be the chair of that board, I quickly changed that to 8, and it was a hard sell to move it to 8 for whatever reason. Yeah, I always block off until 1 o'clock for this meeting because you never know, it could go most times it's just before noon. Sometimes it's been after that. I think that, I think there is something to say about the caseload. Every year for the last, 3 years, I've been doing the report to the Joint City County Planning Committee, and we just did this last month or earlier this month of talking about our caseload, what we've approved, what we're looking at. And each year I've done that report, that caseload has increased, by 10% or so. So we've added cases. Most of you have seen, we've got a lot more cases than we have had before. Probably will be the case moving into the subsequent years. But I can certainly see, I'm not a big fan of 8:30 meetings either, but I can see there's some time savings there, but those are just my thoughts. And I'm not, I don't really have particular feelings on either one.
Let me say I am pleased these meetings are not night meetings.
Yes, indeed, indeed. All right. All right, well, let's go through new business. One more item I wanted to mention. Tisha Wymore is resigning. This was going to be her last meeting. We got a notification about this last night. I was hoping that she'd be on so we could thank her for her service to the board. I think this has been maybe it's her third year on the board or so. I think it's the third year now. So I think just with her workload and everything, it's kind of come into a conflict. I think that just wanted to mention that. I got a note of that last night. All right. Let's look at the orders. So every order on today's agenda has been, we'll need a motion in a second. They were all unanimous. I mentioned that on the last order to Mike Tarrant won't be able to vote. So for B21-00056, is there a motion to approve this order?
Can I ask a question? I did not see the orders. Were those sent?
Cole?
Sorry. They were not sent. That is my error. I can send those here shortly, I believe. Give me one moment. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. I seem to have misplaced them, so I'm sorry about that.
All right, do we want to
I apologize.
move this to the next meeting? What's the procedure here? Brian
No,
said
no. And the reason I say that is because you've got applicants that need approvals. So I think what you might want to do is just take a recess and give Cole some time to locate the orders and then just reconvene. And how much time do you think you need, Cole?
Probably 10 minutes would be enough time.
And then just reconvene in, say 15 minutes.
Okay.
And approve the orders, because you don't want to put it off for 30 days.
I agree. So it's 10:37. How about 10:50? Is that appropriate, Cole?
That's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So let's take a break and we shall reconvene at 10:50. All right, Cole just sent over the orders. Should be in your email.
I'm sorry about that. Rachel, I think I have your email wrong, so I'm going to send it to you. I got a kickback from you, so I'm going to fix it real quick and then send it to you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks.
All right, if everybody can take a quick look over those. All right, are we ready to go through them? Everybody feel comfortable? Not sure where Chad is. There he is.
Sorry, I've been sitting here nodding my head going, yeah, this is good. And my camera wasn't even on. My apologies.
What are we going to do? All right, well, let's move forward. I need a motion and a second on each one. We'll vote just as we usually do for each of these. So B21-00056. Everyone here except, I think, Mike. No, Mike, you were seated on this one. So
That's right.
Anybody want to
Meadows.
offer a motion?
Move
Meadows.
approval.
Is there a second?
Second, Tarrant.
Second on the Tarrant. Tarrant on the second. Terry, you want to take it?
Yes. Kip,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Paletta,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Retchless,
Yes.
Tarrant,
Yes.
and Bushing.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, next one, B21-00057.
Meadows, move approval.
Meadows again. Who's on the second?
O'Shane second.
O'Shane second.
Okay, Kip,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Paletta,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Retchless,
Yes.
Tarrant,
Yes.
and Bushing.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Good deal. Next one, this will be without Mike Tarrant. B22-00001.
I move approval.
Paletta on the first. Who, anybody want a second?
Betchula second.
Retchless second. Terry, did we lose you? I think she's frozen. Afraid so. Do someone else want to call votes?
Can we do that?
Yeah.
You can do it.
Krista?
Yeah, typically, it's the chair.
Oh, I can do that. Cool.
Go for it, Jacob.
All right. Paletta,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Retchless,
Yes.
O'Shane,
Yes.
Kip,
Yes.
Rogers. Yes. Terry, we took care of it for you. We got you on mute again. You're on mute. So that passed 6-0 without Mike Tarrant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Our next meeting is March 22nd. Jessica, do you have anything? We kind of had some discussion about an in-person meeting. Do you want to update anybody?
There is no official update at this time, but
All right.
given that the city is considering removing the requirement for masks in City Hall, there may be a change in the future, but we are still in a holding pattern.
All right. Well, we've become pretty efficient in these virtual meetings. I'll say that. All right, guys. Until March 22nd at 8:30. I hope to see you before. If not, I'll see you then.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See y'all.